So James, coming to you first, please could you give us a high-level overview of what the model is, why we put it together, or asked in another way, what are some of the key industry issues this model aims to help solve?
Yeah, for sure. I'll kick us off here, and I'll preface all of this with no model is perfect. Covering every scenario, with a silver bullet, single roadmap of the right way to do security isn't something that works in any part of our industry, be it defensive or offensive. So think of it as a guideline, a tool to think about how you build your own roadmap and how over time you increase your own capabilities, but with some sensible suggestions about how these things stack in maturity. At a high level, the goal of this is to give you a tool that you can use to validate and improve your existing practices. In fact, if you think about the purpose of offensive security generally, it's designed to enable us to keep ourselves honest, right? We do it to look at how we're doing in the basics of cyber hygiene and configuration. Have we missed an asset or something in a corner that we should have known about from an operational perspective? We do it more progressively later on in our maturity model to understand how our teams, not just our technology, react to certain types of adversarial behavior or threat. We use it as a training tool to make our teams better able to deal with the firefight of an incident, to sharpen up the various people that need to be engaged, to be ready for the real thing. All of us accepting there's no 100% in security, and it's a matter of when, not if, a breach is going to occur. But there are a few challenges here, and I'll very briefly give you a couple of examples of types of discussions I've run into. And then later on, we'll dive into this model and some of these examples with my co-panelists here in a lot more depth who have first-hand experience of this. The first one is, I wish I had a pound for every time I was having a conversation with a member of a security team who had been told it's time they did red teaming. And they've heard this term somewhere. Could have come from an executive on a golf course, could have come from a blog, an article. And the idea of strong adversarial testing of your security to simulate real attack is very attractive and very high value at the right time. But you talk to these organizations and you realize they haven't done most of the basics. They haven't done basic asset discovery, basic vulnerability scans to know what their surface area is. They haven't done more targeted penetration testing against their key kind of exposure points and application. And so diving straight into these more advanced models is unlikely to produce the same result, but it's also likely to be a very expensive way to find simple things that can be found with other tools. The other problem I run into frequently is, folks who are a little earlier in this maturity model, doing a few of these practices, and they're stuck at a certain point, offensive security value. So, for example, they're running vulnerability scans. Pen testing has become a tick box exercise for them. They do it for more compliance purposes than really trying to get a snapshot of their business at that exact moment in time to understand their operational and technological strengths and weaknesses. The idea here is to reinvigorate that discussion in the breadth of ways offensive helps us improve defensive and incident response capabilities, and to know what pragmatic steps to take next so you don't dive from vulnerability scans into advanced, adversary-specific threat simulation, a bit like trying to jump off a building and fly like Superman before you've learned to walk. So those are two extremes that are still very common discussions I find with industry here in 2022. So we're taking a bit of a stance on how you can build up the maturity of offensive over time. And the last thing I'll note here, I'm not going to read the whole model to you. You can all see it. You're all getting a copy in the chat. Each of these types of controls or practice on the right, like red teaming, purple teaming, and threat modeling, in the final version you're receiving, they too have maturity levels. For example, if we take the very first one, static code analysis and dev pipelines, you could do that manually once in a while to sample. You could integrate that into your check-in process so that every time code is submitted, it occurs. You could combine it with automated, black box testing on the pen testing side. So there are levels of maturity to build up on that dimension as well, which is going to make it quite a meaty model, though not as long as the 200-page NIST document. So that the goal is somewhere between the two, detailed and useful, but applicable here. So my hope, as we'll discuss with my co-panelists here, is trying to remove some of the noise in the industry from kind of claims of silver bullet products to get back to focusing on using offensive as a snapshot tool to improve our security processes, how our teams respond, and our technology, and to invoke a discussion where you can think about the right strategy and right way to invest for you and make clearer decisions in how you kind of apply your offensive cybersecurity budget.